So on today's video, let's step back in time a little bit and go over some of the things I built for this car. I was sitting down in the office waiting to go onto it, show you a few ideas, a few forming techniques, kind of a recap because the weather's been hideous and I've been busy, and there's a lot of stuff I want to cover at some point, so may as well do it today. Do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment below, tell me what you think, and yeah, let's just get at this. So how about this? This is a 39 Chevy frame with a custom cross member, custom lower control arms, the knuckles and upper control arms off a 2014 Silverado, with the unit bearing out of a Jeep Cherokee to give me 5 on 4.5, which nets almost 9 inches of usable wheel travel. Let's take a look at this. Now this is one of the times that having the capability to program everything in CAD came out super useful. I could take the dimensions of my frame, drop them into my software, and design everything from scratch. I can make everything work. I made all of this and created some files that I could send off to my buddy Dustin with the CNC plasma and go up to his place. And what I end up with is pieces of metal that are slotted, cut. I can fold them into shape, weld them up. I didn't take a whole lot of pictures of the process of this. I probably got a few around, but literally this is how it all started. And it allows me to build a suspension that's exactly what I want. I wanted the long lower control arm to reduce the ratio on the bags. I can lower my pressures and have something that rides super well. And this is how we deal with the problem with the steering. Now, this rack is actually from, I'd have to check my notes, but mid-90s, I want to say. Chevy Cavalier. It's a firewall mounted rack, so it runs behind the axle center line, which just essentially means that when the input turns, it's spinning reverse of what a rack that's in front of the center line would spin. The biggest thing, however, is this mount here. Now, obviously, your normal steering rack has your movement on the outer. Your inner tie rod ends would be out here. The beauty of this is that now when you're working out steering on an independent suspension, there's some geometry involved that takes the relation of the upper and lower control arms, the points where they are, the lengths, and gives you the point where you need your inner control arm to mount to eliminate bump steer, which is your tire steering as your suspension travels. Now, if I were to mount them right to the center here, that's not going to work. What I need is an inner tie rod end that would mount somewhere up in this area here. The beauty of it, though, is that I can bolt a plate to here, as in the CAD. It's not in the CAD drawing, but I can bolt a plate to here that has my location for my inner tie rod ends up in here, which, if I do my calculations right, means that throughout this almost 9 inches of travel the car will have, there should be essentially zero bump steer. And this is still a power steering rack. I can still make everything work well. Just got to think way outside the box. And I've had it zap strap into the car. The steering column or the steering shaft is going to fit around my motor. And I just need to make the plates to mount this, and I can make that car steer. So to make that entire setup go up and down, I had a few options. You can go the ball valve route. You can buy all the fancy digital systems. Now, what I have on the table here, I'm actually going to get a second set for the little rat rod that I'm building. These came from Princess Auto if you're in Canada. These are air cylinder control valves. Now, what's interesting about these is that they're a 3-position lever. These actually lock on. But if you are to change the way the ports work, meaning normally you would have an inlet here. When you pull the valve one way, it pushes air through there and it would exhaust the other side. Now, I didn't want to fill in a dump valve where they were different sized. I want to go up and down quickly. So the three 3/8 NPT ports, if I actually run air into a different spot, when I move the valve one way, it pushes it into the bag, and when I push this the other way, it lets the air out of the bag just as quick. So when I disassembled one of these, the way these are set up, they have detents on them, and I'm going to fill the detents so that these valves lock in the middle, but here their spring return to center. I can modify that quite easily. What's cool about these is that when you mount these under a panel, the only thing that shows through is the little rubber boot and the nice black anodized lever. Now I can mount these up and have these across the console. Well, they're not going to fit quite so tight together, but I can have them underneath my console. I can have four-corner control, and the best part about all of it is that these valves are under $30 a piece Canadian, so I can have extremely fast up and down on my system, on my car, and it's around 120 bucks Canadian, less if you can get them on sale. And if they ever stop working, I don't have electronics to deal with. All I have to do is replace a couple of O-rings, because these things tear down super fast. They're nice pieces, but from my point of view, this is something extremely thinking outside the box, because this isn't a car part. I know I can go buy, like, they've got the 4-play setup out there. I can't remember what it was called before that, but it's a couple $100 US. I got to send out for it, and they still run. I can't remember if they're 1/8 or 1/4 inch ports, so it's a slow system. This is going to be a fast system, super clean, and the best part, it's cheap. Now, with my motor in the car, that's a 425 big block Cadillac, which is the exact same as a 472 or a 500. But sitting down in the car, you can see how low it is. And for what I'm trying to build, not coming through the hood just wasn't an option. Raising the motor wasn't an option. So what I needed to do was build something that brought the carbs up top. So let's take a look at that. And as you can see in the picture, this is what I've got going on. It's not finished yet, but this is the tunnel ram that I've started working on. And we've got some 3/8 plates that I programmed and cut out on the CNC, front and rear plates, because the intake manifold gasket on this has a tray that fits underneath. I'll probably just fill this in with tin later. What I didn't want was just rat rod style box tube, and if you can see, these are actually tapered, and all of these runners have these nice formed edges. This is all bent. This rear plate was hammered over a buck, just like I've done in other videos. I need to put the front plate on and put a flange on the top. I'm going to put a burst plate in the front of this. But let's show you how I got here. So what you can see in the picture here is the left and right sides of formed pieces of the intake runner. Now on the right side, the lower piece is a buck that's made out of a piece of box tube, 1/4 inch plate. The ends are welded. Everything was smoothed out. That was the inner shape that I wanted each of my runners to be. Above that is a piece of plate that literally just has flat bar welded to either side of it to give a female buck. So basically what I was going to do is cut some plate a little bit oversized, and we take that whole assembly on the right, put it into the press, and in one shot form the runner. Now that female buck, the plate is welded in the middle of the plate, so I could use it for left and right. I literally took a piece of rusty metal, you can see them in the pictures, and hammered it out, and I got a quick clip of that. So once we had the runners made, I took the flanges that went onto each head. The bolts go in on an angle, so I actually had to oblong out the holes in the flanges, take some DOM that had the ID that I needed, cut it on an angle, bolt down each bolt one at a time, bolt it down tight to the flange, and then burn the tubes to the flange. Then, one location at a time, assemble each intake runner, cut them to size, offset them. You know, every intake runner is a little bit different, but in my head, a little bit of theory was that I wanted to increase intake velocity. I'm sure there's some performance aspects that I probably have wrong, but to be honest, it does look pretty cool. Now, I wish I had videos and pictures of the whole process more than I do, but this is what we end up with. I mean, I've got lots of space to bolt everything. I've got plenty of space for my flanges. I'll make sure to get video of that whole process. Everything is kind of slid forward here because for how far I stuffed the motor back, I needed the room to clear my firewall here, and I also didn't want a snout that is a mile long. I didn't want to add an extra bearing support up there. The way the motor sits, everything was going to have to be a little bit different than just working on a Chevy. But I have a one-of-a-kind intake manifold that when it's done, it works out that this flange here is basically at my hood level. So with the car built, I'll still have my adapter, my carbs, my filter assembly above that, which should be just about level with the roof once it's all assembled. Now, this is an old picture of the car. This was while I was still mocking up the 38 doors on it. You can see that the original roof was too short. That's a common problem in the chop top. Sitting down on the ground with the suspension in it, and I stumbled on, I was passed along by a friend of mine, a 44 door, which I mentioned the differences in the cowl before. But we picked up this 4-door with the intention of robbing some of the parts. And then we proceeded to gut it. We stripped everything down. We ended up reusing the roof. Or from the new car, the hood went on to the 39. The bits and pieces are kind of swapped back and forth. The fender that's sitting on top of the front tire there is actually the fender I used for the roll pan and the roof on the rat rod. I reused every single piece of metal that I possibly could, but I just thought this was kind of a cool picture. Now as for things coming up. This is a screenshot of a CAD model that I made just over a year ago now. 36-inch throat, powered bead roller with a super tough, internally ribbed, keyed frame. Gonna make it out of 3/16. This is something that I'm going to head down to my buddy's shop, Backdoor Fab. We're going to build a pair of these next month so that I can move forward on the car. Now, when I was programming the bead roller, this is one of the other things that I programmed. I wanted a good belt grinder, similar to the stuff the knife makers use, but I wanted it done very specifically, so I started from scratch. Now, what you're looking at here is a belt grinder that uses the common belts. The beauty is that once it's bolted down to the table, you can see in this picture, the entire assembly is designed to pivot. I can flop it 90 degrees. I can lock it out on angles. I've got a bed design that fits on this. There's a backer there. But the biggest thing for me is that I wanted interchangeable heads. I want to set up multiple heads, so in this case, I could use this setup with a 1 3/4 wheel on the end. I can adjust it out. I can use it to actually cope tubes. I wanted something that was extremely adjustable so that I could use it for just about anything. Now, I don't know if it's going to get built this coming trip, but this, as well as an English wheel that I'm working on the design for, are gonna get built probably this winter at the latest. Let's go get the mail. Now, somebody commented that, you know, they're out of here because I didn't unbox in video. The last week has been extremely hectic. I had some friends come up. My mother-in-law's come up for a little while. I just thought this was kind of cool. We live in the middle of nowhere. Everything comes to the post office. There's no couriers. We've just got a little mailbox and, you know, the kind of place where everybody knows you by name. But the post office is sitting up against a public dock. We are on a deepwater ocean inlet, and honestly, it's just one of the most beautiful places I've ever visited. So we needed to live here, but in this case, we were running up to the post office because I was picking up pads for the random orbital. I've got detail or triangle pads for the detail sander. I've got Scotch-Brite pads for my 90-degree air grinder, as well as 36-grit sandpaper ones for cleaning up welds. My son loves to polish the metal, strip it down, so the random orbital and the 90 are just awesome. But I also got myself a mic, which we're going to be getting operating pretty quick here, so hopefully everybody can stop complaining about, you know, the sound quality here. Do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. The channel's growing so fast. I'm super impressed. I'm absolutely loving the community, but I got goals to reach here, guys. So please subscribe to the channel, push the notifications bell, like the video, comment, give me some feedback. I keep trying to respond to every comment, but I love you guys, and I'm having a blast. I'm sorry the video's late, but you know, this weekend life took priority. I had some volunteer work to do. I'm on the local fire department. Got to soak some kids with the hose, take the kids for a ride in the fire truck in our local parade. You know, sometimes you got to step back, and no matter how beautiful the weather is, that's what you got to do. So we got CAD video tomorrow, another video on Wednesday. See you then.